Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala abdihi wa rasulihi nabiyina wa imamina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. So tonight's lesson, inshallah ta'ala, our Imam, our personality tonight is a great personality, well known to the students of Hadith, the different disciples of Hadith, Ashab Hadith, very well known, renowned, famous, not too known, I would say, to people of other genres too much. Laymen, 9 to 5 Muslims, even some people involved in dawah and things like this, really may not know. Perhaps you've heard the name in a lecture or a fiqh book or a footnote or a table of contents or an index, but actually knowing the personality and the amount of prestige that is behind this name and this personality, I would humbly say, is known only by a few. By a few. I would say that humbly. That would be my humble opinion and estimation. Perhaps a few intellectual, self-respecting people of fiqh, aqidah would know a bit more of him, but I think only the real people involved in hadith sciences know the true status of our personality tonight. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. So in English and in Arabic, tonight our Imam is known as Ibn Khuzaymah. Ibn Khuzaymah. That's what we're studying tonight. Ibn Khuzaymah. Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawood, Tirmidhi, Nasa'i, Ibn Majah, Malik, Ahmed. Ibn Khuzaymah is in the same line. Obviously coming after the 3rd century, his death specifically, but his books, his personality, his status, same pedigree. Alright? Same pedigree. Alright? So here we have an article on Wikipedia. And over the years, I've been a very big fan and a large proponent of reading Wikipedia articles for several reasons. One of the reasons is that you'd be shocked how much information and science is available just on a simple public page. Nothing underground. You have to know another language. You have to have this type of internet to access mind-blowing information just on a simple, basic Google search. And of course, this applies to other than Islam as well. As we have spoken about this many times before, with regards to the massacres and the atrocities that are taking place now in Palestine, which some people in the news call a war, and some people choose to call a conflict, and some people choose to call an attack, so on and so forth, whatever name or title that your agenda suits. Right? You'll be shocked if you went on Wikipedia right now and you read about the history of Palestine and Israel, the history of the Muslims, the Arabs, the Israelis, the history of Jewish immigration, the history of terrorist attacks, the founding fathers, the later prime ministers of Israel were renowned terrorists deemed illegal to get a visa to travel to Great Britain. And they later on became prime ministers and won Nobel Peace Prizes. And I'm trying to make one point, and one point only. When I hear you talk about Palestine and Israel and Gaza and the West Bank and Jordan, it's not the topic of our discussion. What I'm trying to prove something to you is that you will be shocked at the sound agreed upon information just on this one simple website. And if you brought this information, many people, not all, because most people just don't care, but many people that say, where'd you get that from? That's from an Arab source, or that's from an Islamic source, or that's from a terrorist source, or that's from some conspiracy theory, WikiLeaks type of source. You say, no, look, right here, boom. Wikipedia is open, public, it's not censored. All of the links, everything is there. You can cross-reference it yourself. Mind-blowing info. Mind-blowing, like wow. I never had an idea or a clue. So the same applies to what you can learn and benefit from a website like this. And of course, this website, if it was an encyclopedia, a physical book, or website, it's not the Quran. كما قال الشافعي رحمه الله تعالى أبى الله أن يتم إلا كتابه. There's no book which is absolutely perfect and flawless except for the Quran al-Kareem. End of discussion. But the introduction to science and information at your fingertips, and there are countless other online encyclopedias, there are countless other websites, but just 2 seconds, you'll be shocked. Your mind will be blown. Alright? And if you can prove and establish these points through the well-known, open, public sources from our battle cap, then what do you think about the sources which are deeper and require greater knowledge and greater depth? What do you think about the real, under-the-table stuff? How mind-blowing would that be? You get the point I'm trying to make? How mind-blowing would that be? If my day-to-day wardrobe is so fresh, my everyday drip is so crazy, right? Imagine how it's going to look when I do what? When I dress up for an occasion. You get the point? If my bummy clothes are better than 9 out of 10 people how they dress, how do you think I'm going to appear for a wedding or a funeral or a banquet? You get the point I'm trying to make. So that is the technique here. If you can kill someone with the basic public stuff, imagine with the stuff that's hidden that they don't put out in public, or you can only access in a certain language, or with a VPN or whatever the case may be. Imagine that stuff, the stuff that isn't public, the stuff that is censored. Imagine how damaging that would be to this person's argument and to this person's claim. That's the moral of the story. Fahimna? We got this or not? And this is extremely important in college, whatever you're studying in life. If you can kill them with the basic, simple stuff, when you bring out the big, heavy stuff, there's no chance. All right, khair inshallah. All right, so let's move forward tonight with Ibn Khuzaymah. We have English sources, we have Arabic sources, and once more, no one please get the idea or the thought that we are encouraging people to depend upon the internet and depend upon Wikipedia. ليس هذا المقصود. All right? طيب, خير إن شاء الله. So I'm going to read from the Muqaddimah, Volume 1. I'm closing this. Jazakallah khairan. Volume 1 here. This is the actual book. 4 volumes, which we'll get into later. His Sahih Ibn Khuzaymah, Matbu' al-Mawjud minhu. الجزء الموجود منه. طيب. Here it says Sahih Ibn Khuzaymah للإمام أو لإمام الأئمة. That's his kunya, Wahid. You know, you have Shaykh al-Islam, Amir al-Mu'mineen. His laqab, his nickname was Imam al-A'imma. The Imams of the Imams. The Imam of the Imams. That's what they called him. The Imam, the leader of the leaders. Right? He was the best of the selected best. Abu Bakr, Muhammad ibn Ishaq, ibn Khuzaymah, السلمي النيسابوري ولد سنة 223 هجريا وتوفي سنة 311 هجريا رحمه الله تعالى. Here is الجزء الأول حققه وعلق عليه وخرج أحاديثه وقدم له الدكتور محمد مصطفى الأعظمي. So he is the editor of the book, Muhammad Mustafa al-A'zami. May Allah have mercy upon him. He's the editor of the book, and this print is from 1980. 1980. Newer versions of the book, of the Tahqiq, I'm sure there are, but this is the one that I'm dealing with right now. Dr. Muhammad Mustafa al-A'zami, and of course, as we've said before, with regards to many of our brothers and sisters from India, from Pakistan, from Bangladesh, from Kashmir, this region or part of the earth, you should be very proud of your rich, long history of Hadith scholars. You should be very proud of your rich and long history of Hadith scholars. خير inshallah ta'ala. So let's move forward. 1390 in Mecca. مقدمة ابن خزيمة وصحيحه يعد القرن أو القرنان الثالث والرابع الهجريان من أضج القرون الثقافة الإسلامية إنتاجا. Alright, so we previously spoke on the 3rd century, the 3rd century. And we said that's the golden century, the golden era for Islamic sciences in general, but our thing, Hadith. And the best of the Hadith books were written during that century. And we also dipped into before the 3rd century, when we spoke on Imam Malik. Imam Malik died before the 3rd century, and his muwatta, and his status. Now, the first class that we did, we said that Hadith sciences, the preservation of the deen, didn't start nor end with the birth or the death of who? Bukhari. And this is a perfect and prime example of that. Before Bukhari, it was great legacy. After Bukhari rahimahullah died and passed away, the scholars of Hadith did what? They continued to move forward. They continued to author, to write. They continued to compile. They continued to summarize. And not just copy, but they themselves, abda'u wa antaju. They created their own, and they had their own style. It wasn't just copycatting Bukhari and the people who came before him. And from that is Ibn Khuzaymah, and the 3rd, obviously we mentioned that, and the 4th century. So in the 4th century, Ibn Khuzaymah is still, the century is still ripe and lush with Hadith scholars. In contrast to the 8th, 9th, and 10th century, which were great Imams alive, Ibn Hajar, Dhahabi, Mizzi, but the riwayat were all thabita, in which they were just reporting back what was already collected and in widespread circulation. But here, نفسه هو يخرج ويسند بسنده هو إلى الرسول عليه الصلاة والسلام وإلى الصحابة وإلى التابعين. Alright, so the 4th century is still fresh. Alright, the Islamic scholarship in Hadith is still fresh. Alright, right. So let's start reading here in Arabic before we go to English. من صاحبنا اليوم والليلة صاحبنا القارئ من يريد الأجر والثواب في ذلك فليتنافس المتنافسون. أسرع واحد فيكم تفضل بسم الله. في هذا العصر الذهبي. Can we get the lights, please? All the lights on total darkness. With the light though, the light of the hearts, inshallah. But right now we need darkness. How about this one right here, by the mihrab? Can we get that? And it stays on. طيب بسم الله تفضل.
في هذا العصر الذهبي ولد إمام الأئمة فقيه
وحيد. I had to get my own laser pointer. What's up with that, bro? I had to go to Staples myself last week.
فقيه الآفاق المجتهد المطلق أبو بكر محمد بن إسحاق بن الخزيمي النسابوري مولى مشهر بن المزاحم في شهر صفر سنة 23 و200 بالنسابور.
طيب, in the 4th century, this Imam, or rather, he says, in the 3rd century, he was born in the 3rd century, okay? This Imam was born. Imam al-A'imma, Faqih al-Afaq. They call him the jurist of the horizons. East, west, north, south, he was the top. Al-Mujtahid al-Mutlaq, absolute independent jurist. And be careful now, because they call him Mujtahid Mutlaq, but he's an Imam في أي فن؟ في الحديث. انتبه لنفسك. مجتهد مطلق محدث. لا مذهبي متعصب مشتغل بالفقه والأقوال والروايات. لا. مجتهد مطلق وهو صاحب ايش؟ حديث. So people say the hadith scholars don't know, they just compile. ما عندهم فقه, ما عندهم فهم, إنهم حدثنا وأخبرنا فحسب. المحدثون هم الصيادلة. الأتباع هم الفقهاء. هذا كلام سهل لا يسوء أبدا. So they call him Mujtahid Mutlaq, even though he was a hadith scholar. He didn't have to blindly follow and depend upon anyone's opinion He would look and search for the evidence himself, by himself. Mujtahid mutlaq. Abu Bakr is his kunya, Abu Bakr, and his first name is actually Muhammad. So his name, just like Bukhari, just like Tirmidhi, just like Abu Dawood, just like Ibn Majah, isn't Ibn Khuzaymah. His first name is what? Muhammad. That's his first name. Alright? Abu Bakr is his kunya, the son of Ishaq, and his grandfather was named Khuzaymah. Was that the name of a man? Was he attributed to his grandmother, great-grandmother? Or was it a nickname of his grandfather? His grandfather passed by a well. Someone saw him. Khuzaymah. A location, a store, shop, dukkan, Allahu Alam. The Al-Qab, Ibn Hajar, Ibn Taymiyyah, right? Ibn Al-Qayyim. Those are their actual names. His actual name is Muhammad. And he was from Nishapur, just like who? Even Muslim. I sent to him. And his Mawla, once again, he comes from the lineage of a Mawla. Whether he is a manumitted slave, his great-grandfather was a manumitted slave, or one of his grandfathers was a Majusi, Zoroastrian, Mushrik. He accepted Islam through this Muslim from this tribe, or his great-grandfather was an ally with this Arab tribe. Okay? But in most cases, when we read about the scholars of Hadith, especially the early ones, in most cases, the Mawla meaning Riq, because they come from a lineage of slaves. His great-great-grandfather was a slave and was freed, and then hence took on the ascription of this tribe and of this clan. And the important point of this, and the benefit that we learn from this, is that blood and lineage doesn't give you anything. That's what's important. It can hurt you where you come from, and it can benefit you. So nobility, when it comes to knowledge, isn't based off of blood. The dunya, genealogy, this tribe, I'm the son of such and such, no problem. But none of that matters. And the only thing that matters is what you put forth. Alright? So it's very important for us to understand, because it can go both ways. I come from this tribe, I become lazy and relaxed. And I become entitled. And of course, that's the foundation of the whole entire Palestine-Israel conflict. Is we deserve this land, the right to return. It's our land. We're better than them. And all people outside of our genealogy or lineage or religion are servants to us. One of those, there are two types of Gentiles. Those who are to be manipulated and those who are to be exterminated. And of course, we know that the Arabs are the type, according to them, who are to be exterminated. And the other Europeans, they are to be manipulated. The United States, Britain, France, whatever the case may be. It's a fact. All other races have to fall in one of those two categories. Exterminated or manipulated. Alright? We can't get rid of these. We need them. But we have to pull their puppet strings. Okay? One Jew killed, 100 Arabs or Muslims must be killed. Not today, in 2024, in Rafah or Khan Yunis, but 1946, 1939. That been their policy. One Jewish person was killed, they would go in a village and shoot 100 Arabs. Just like that. That's always been their aqidah. So the concept of lineage, right? And a person being entitled because of his lineage. Also, we have the concept of, without going too deep, are you actually of this lineage? Do you deserve this land? For argument's sake, you believe in the Bible, I believe in the Bible, okay, for argument's sake. Are you actually from this lineage? Or are you from Poland and Russia and Ukraine? Hence the name changing and the Hebraization of the different towns and cities, and the list goes on. But let's be factual right now. So your grandfather migrated from Poland. It's a fact. It's an historical fact. From Russia, from Bulgaria, wherever you came from, England, Ireland, then to Haifa, or whatever the case may be. So right now, you're Polish, but the people who've been living in Palestine, Jew, Muslim, or Christian, for 700, 800 years, they have no right to that land. How ludicrous is that? How absurd is that? Point number 3 is the whole foundation of Zionism with regards to a secularized Jew. A Jew that does not follow the laws of the Torah or the Talmud, but he's Jew because of lineage. Your mother's a Jew, that means you're a Jew, even if you're a godless atheist, but you're still a Jew. Hence, you are entitled to that land, and obviously, one Jew in that land means one less Arab, according to them. You have to go. You have to leave. That's the end of discussion by the gun or on your own free will, but you gotta go. This is our land. We're entitled to this. So the whole problem isn't based off of Hamas. It's not based off of the UN. It's based off of this aqidah of genealogy and ultimate superiority of blood over others. If you don't go to the core of the problem, then you just want to have the same revolving door. Peace, humanitarian pause, blah, 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 blah. It's going to be the same thing. These people don't deserve what we deserve. God has given us this because of our blood, even if we don't follow the teachings of God and Musa. And that is also a part of the foundation of political Zionism. It's the founding of a secular, godless, atheist Jew. End of discussion. And that's why you find many other types of Jews, regardless of their different sect and background, who are actually practicing. They vehemently go against the whole idea and concept of political Zionism as a blasphemous. All right. I'm not here to discuss this, but I'm trying to show you the danger of relying upon your blood. Thinking that you're better just because of your blood, and thinking that you're less just because of your blood. It's a two-way street that's very dangerous for Muslims and non-Muslims alike. That's the moral of the story. So Ibn Khuzaymah, rahimahullah ta'ala, that's his lineage. He was born in the month of Safar, 223. So he was born in the Qarn al-Dhahabi, the 3rd century. He was born in the middle of all of the action. طيب بسم الله تفضل بني بالحديث. And these are بعض المصادر: الإرشاد الخليلي، بداية والنهاية، تاريخ جرجان، تاريخ نيسابور، تذكرة الحفاظ، الجرح والتعديل لابن أبي حاتم الرازي، سيرة أعلام النبلاء. Alright, تفضل بني بالحديث.
منذ حداثته وسمع من إسحاق بن راهويه المتوفى سنة 238 ومحمد بن حميد المتوفى سنة 230 ولم يحدث عنهما لكونه كتب عنهما في صغره وقبل فهمه وتبصره.
Right, so he started off at a young age learning hadiths, studying منذ حداثته. And he heard from 2 great scholars. One of them is Ishaq ibn Rahawayh, who died 238. And Ishaq ibn Rahawayh is one of the biggest teachers of Imam al-Bukhari. And he was one of the people who inspired Imam al-Bukhari to compile his book. He put the battery in his back. He told Bukhari, do it. So there's a very, very, very big figure right here. And then secondly, that's my name, Muhammad ibn Hamid or Hamid, who died in the year 230. But Ibn Khuzaymah never passed on the narrations because he heard from them and he wrote from them when he was still young. قَبْلَ تَفَهُّمِهِ وَتَبَصُّرِهِ, before he was strong. And he didn't want to be deceitful by making a mistake. So it shows his piety from a very young age. رحلاته لطلب العلم. فضل. وعلى سنة الزمان
أراد أن يرتحل لسماع الحديث النبوي وكان يرغب في الذهاب إلى قتيبة استأذنه أباه أجابه اقرأ القرآن أولا حتى آذن لك.
He started traveling. When did he start traveling? The sunnah of the people of that time was to travel. An abandoned sunnah today, to travel, to go out to listen and study with the scholars of hadith. And he wanted to hear from Qutayba ibn Sa'id, from the Shuyukh Kutub Sitta, this great imam. He asked his father's permission, and his father told him, read the Quran first. Then I'll give you permission. Alright? يقول ابن خزيمة
فاستظهرت القرآن فقال لي امكث حتى تصلي بالخطبة ففعلت فلما عيدنا أذن لي خرجت إلى
مر.
مرو، سمعت بالمرو الرود.
مر الروث.
مر الرود.
هناك مروزي وهناك مروذي وهناك مروذي. تفضل.
الروث محمد بن هشام، يعني صاحب
هشيم.
فنعى إلينا قتيبة.
Allah musta'an. So Ibn Khuzaymah said, فَاسْتَظْهَرْتُ الْقُرْآنِ. I got it, I did it, I mastered it, memorized it, I did everything. And then my father said, no, don't leave yet. Make the, lead the salat, the khatma, you finishing everything, right? So he says, فَفَعَلْتُ. Alright, I listened to my father. Okay, so therefore, when there was the Eid after Ramadan, the Khatm of the Quran, after the Eid, okay, فَلَمَّا عَيَّدْنَا أَذْنَ لِي. He allowed me to go. So I went to Maru, alright, in this area, current day Iran, Khorasan, Persia, and I heard from Muhammad ibn Hisham, who was the friend of Hushaym ibn Bashir al-Wasati, and that's when he told us that Qutayba ibn Sa'id died. So he shouldn't have listened to who? He shouldn't have listened to his father. He should have politely disobeyed his father. Him hearing from Qutayba ibn Sa'id would have been better for him. And obviously that's a discussion in itself. When can you or should you not listen to your parents? When a time comes in which you may have to disagree with your parents. When the virtue is plain, I'm sorry, I gotta do it. Right? Because when this person dies, it's a celebrity that you want to meet. Right? Your parents say, no, you can't go to the concert. Oh, it's too crazy, blah, 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 blah. Do this first, finish this first, then I'll let you go to the concert. Next week is another performance. Don't worry about it. You get to the concert the next week, the artist, he passed away. I had an opportunity to go get a signature, take a selfie with my favorite artist. Now the artist is what? It's gone. So that's a very important lesson with regards to seizing opportunity. And sometimes in life, you have to be a little aggressive when it comes to seizing opportunity. Sometimes in life. That's a fact. Alright? طيب فعلى هذا بدأ بالخزيمة رحلاته العلمية وهو So he started seeking knowledge when he was 17 years old. Alright, so he was very, very wide, expansive trip that he went on. He traveled many lands in the eastern side or sector or sphere of the Islamic world. He went to Nishapur, obviously, where he's from, Ishaq ibn Rahowi and others, Maru, Ali ibn Muhammad and others, Ray, Sham, Jazeera, Misr, Wasit, Baghdad, Basra, Kufa. All of those places he went to. There's a lot of countries, a lot of lands from these great imams that he heard from. طيب كما سمع He studied with Bukhari and Muslim. He heard from them. He met them. He met up with them. He took narrations from the two sheikhs. Also, Sahibuna al-Dhuhli, the one we read about Bukhari's Mihna. Muhammad ibn Yahya al-Dhuhli. Tayyib, Fadl, wa Khalq, and countless others. Who were his students? Rawa anhu? Many of his teachers narrated hadith, what? From him. The people that he learned from, they did took the knowledge and passed it on. Once again, showing you how the knowledge is supposed to be. The student is learning from the teacher, and if the teacher benefits from the student, the teacher, he isn't to be too big to say, I learned this from my student. Or the father, thank you son, you're right, that's a great idea. Shut up, you don't know what you're talking about. You're a little boy, you're a young kid, you don't know what you're talking about. Never ever say things like this. Someone brings the truth, you accept the truth. Younger than you, doesn't matter. Who are you to tell me what to do? I taught you. Just yesterday you didn't know anything. Jazakallah khairan. Thank you. You brought something to my attention. Alhamdulillah, what's the problem? So this is the akhlaq of the scholars of hadith. And as many of the salaf salih, the pious predecessors will say, لا ينظر الرجل حتى يأخذ عمن هو فوقه وعمن هو مثله وعمن هو دونه. He said, you will never excel in this field, hadith, until you learn from those who are above you, you learn from those who are your colleagues, and you learn from those who are younger than you. That's the only way in which you'll succeed, is removing prejudice with regards to people. You're younger than me, so I have nothing to learn from you. You're from this race, so I have nothing to learn from you. You're of this orientation, so I have nothing to learn from you. Abadan. That wasn't the attitude of the people of Hadith. And we see that Bukhari and Muslim, from his teachers, they also narrated from him Kharij al-Sahihain and in other books outside of their Sahihs. Muhammad ibn Abdullah ibn Abdul Hakam ila akhirih. So there are many different students that he had, along with many teachers that he had. شجاعته الأدبية.
كان ابن خزيمة جريئا لا يخاف الأمراء والولاة.
انتبه كلمة ايش؟ الولاة. قلنا هذا في الدرس السابق. صح؟ دائما المشاكل تأتينا من طيب قال لا يخاف الأمراء.
قال أبو بكر بن باروي سمعت ابن خزيمة يقول كنت عند الأمير إسماعيل بن أحمد حدث عن أبيه بحديث وهو وهم في إسناده فرددت عليه فلما خرجت من عندي قال أبو ذر القاضي قد كنا نعرف أن هذا الحديث خطأ منذ 20 سنة ولم يقدر أحد منا أن يرده عليه فقلت له لا يحل لي أن أسمع حديث رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فيه خطأ أو تحريف فلا أرده.
Alright, so the next part of his biography is his courage, his scholastic courage. As we've stated many times before, the people of Hadith were not punks. They were not cowards. They weren't scared. They weren't just memorizers and compilers. They had manhood. They were strong. And they knew that the only one that we fear is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No one else. You're a human being. There's nothing you can do to me unless Allah wills. The knowledge gave them that courage and freedom of the heart. And only a few people truly understand this. It's like an intoxication. When you feel free, that bravery, only brave people can understand it. And a coward can never ever comprehend what it means to have a free heart. He can't get it. What do you mean you're not afraid? What do you mean you're not scared? Aren't you afraid? No, I'm not. What's to be afraid of? If I die, alhamdulillah. If I go to prison, so on and so forth, so be it. As Shaykh Hussain ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala will say, مَا يَصْنَعُ بِي أَعْدَائِي. He says, what can my enemies do to me? What can they do to me? Look at the confidence. He said, what can my enemies do to me? They kill me, martyrdom. They lock me up, vacation. They kick me out of my hometown. I get to see Allah's earth. I get to, make istighfar and tawbah, things that I can't do because I'm writing books 24/7. What can my enemies do to me? You can't win. And this is the attitude, alhamdulillah, mazal hatta al-yawm, for many of our brothers and sisters overseas. And we commend them for that. You kill us, Jannah, inshallah. You wound us, expiation of sin. And if not, we win. And you lose, and you go to Jahannam. You're going to lose. But the further the Muslims know this and believe this and practice this, no doubt, the more afraid their enemies will be of them on the battlefield. When they're free, and they don't fear them. So Ibn Khuzaymah was not a coward. Jari'an, he was very bold. La yakhafu al-umara, he was never afraid of the rulers or the leaders. He didn't care about them. La yahabun, they didn't impress him. He wasn't intimidated by their wealth and by their status and their power. There's a story of Abu Bakr ibn Balawayh, he mentions, I heard Ibn Khuzaymah saying, one day I was with this Amir, this leader, this governor, Ismail ibn Ahmed. فَحَدَّثَ عَنْ أَبِيهِ بِحَدِيثٍ. So Ismail ibn Ahmed, he narrated a hadith from his father, وَهِمَ فِي إِسْنَادِهِ. And he made a mistake. He misquoted someone in the chain of narration. فَوَرَدَدْتُهُ عَلَيْهِ. I said, لا, that's wrong. أخطأت وهمت معلش ليس هكذا. That's wrong. فَوَرَدَدْتُهُ عَلَيْهِ. So when we left the presence of that leader, Abu Dhar al-Qadhi said, we knew he was making this mistake for 20 years. Sitting with him. 20 years he kept making a mistake. No one had the guts to correct him before you. No one had the courage to speak up before you came along. Ibn Khuzaymah then said, anytime I hear someone making a hadith or quoting a hadith from the Messenger of Allah, making a mistake, making an error, he says, it's unlawful for me to keep silent. It's haram for you to just sit there with your mouth closed, knowing that this person is saying something about the Prophet which is incorrect. How better will the world be today if we took this attitude? If we took this attitude, Allahumma musta'an. طيب.
Because the hadith was from his father or what?
وهم مهما كان بس هو ما ليس والد ابن خزيمة، والد الأمير. أي نعم. قال كرمه وسخاؤه. كان ابن خزيمة
رحمه الله سخيا جوادا كريما، كان يتصدق حتى بملابسه ويبدو أنه لم يكن يلبس القميص لواحد مرتين.
الله أكبر. طيب. Now he discusses generosity. How generous Ibn Khuzaymah was. He was so generous that he would always give charity. He would even give charity with his clothes. And it seems, he says, وَيَبْدُو, it seems that he never wore the same shirt twice. Not because it's old, it's played out, it goes into the closet, he would gift his clothes. Long Akbar. Think about that. Who from amongst us can say that? He never wore the same garment twice. He would always give his clothes away to people. So this shows us that the scholars of Hadith are generous, not stingy people, generous with their knowledge, and generous with the worldly possessions as well. And obviously, there is هناك علاقة وثيقة بين الشجاعة وبين الكرم والسخاء. كما أن هناك علاقة بين البخل والشح والجبن والخوف. The braver you are, the more generous you are. The more cowardly you are, the stingier of a person you'll be. May Allah help us all. طيب قال محمد بن الفضل كان جدي أبو بكر لا يدخل شيئا جهده بل ينفقه على أهل العلم ولا يعرف صنجة الوزن ولا يميز بين 10 و20 ربما أخذ منه 10 فيتوهم أنها 5. Muhammad ibn al-Fadl was his grandson. He said, my grandfather Ibn Khuzaymah, he never hid anything from us. He never hoarded anything. Rather, he would spend everything on his fellow scholars and the students of knowledge. He didn't know the scales, how much, 10, 20 pounds, kilos. Maybe we took 10 pounds from him, 10 kilos, and he thought it was only 5. Here, take some more. No, it's enough. Nah, give me the bag. He would scoop more. So you bought 10 kilos, 10 pounds of rice, and the merchant is saying, no, that's not enough. Give me the bag. No, this is enough. Give me the bag. No, give me the bag. Come on. He would scoop more. He's extremely generous. And obviously, the more generous you are, the more the people will love you. وقال الحاكم ابن خزيمة عمل دعوة عظيمة ببستان جمع فيها الفقراء والأغنياء ونقل كل ما في البلد من الأكل والشواء والحلوى وكان يوما مشهودا بكثرة الخلائق ولا يتهيأ مثله إلا لسلطان كبير وكان ذلك في جماد الأولى سنة 9 و300. Shortly before he died, the year 309, Al-Hakim Nisaburi, who inshallah will read his biography, he mentioned that Ibn Khuzaymah one day threw a grand ball, da'wah azima, a grand feast, a huge banquet that only a leader would have the ability to throw together, to put together, and he invited everyone, the poor and the rich. No distinction of class, everybody eats for free today. ثناء الأمة عليه قال ابن حبان
ما رأيت على وجه الأرض من أن يحسن صناعة
سنن
ويحفظ ألفاظها الصحاح
وزياداتها
حتى كأن السنن كلها بين عينيه
الله أكبر.
محمد بن إسحاق.
Ibn Hibban of the 4th century, another great scholar that we have to read about, he said, I've never seen ala wajh al-ard, on the face of the earth, a man with such mastery of hadith and all of the different subgenres and branches, the versions of the hadith, the authentic hadith, everything more than Muhammad ibn Ishaq ibn Khuzaymah. He says as if everything was in front of his eyebrows, as if it was on the bridge of his nose. As if all of the information was right there, as if he was reading it right from the bridge of his nose. Think about that. Think about that. قال الدارقطني كان ابن خزيمة ثبتا معدوم النظير. He says Ibn Khuzaymah was peerless. No one even came close to him. Period. End of discussion. وقال ابن أبي حاتم وقد سئل عن ابن خزيمة ويحكم هو يسأل عنا ولا نسأل عنه وهو إمام يقتدى به. Ibn Abi Hatim, another great scholar that we have to read about, and his father as well. He was asked about Ibn Khuzaymah. He said, woe to you, wayhakum. How are we being asked about him and he's not being asked? How are we, what do you mean? How is he being asked? You ask us about him. No, it's the opposite. The people are to go to him and ask him about us. وهو إمام يقتدى به. And he was a righteous imam, an example and a role model for the people. وقال أبو علي الحسين بن محمد الحافظ لم أرى مثل محمد بن إسحاق قال وكان ابن خزيمة يحفظ الفقهيات من حديثه كما يحفظ القارئ السورة. وقال ابن سريج إن ابن خزيمة يخرج النكت من حديث رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بالمنقاش. Last two quotes. Abu Ali Hussein ibn Muhammad al-Hafiz said, I never saw someone like Muhammad ibn Ishaq, like Ibn Khuzaymah. Period. He used to memorize the fiqh points from hadiths like a qari would memorize the Quran, like surah. The qari that doesn't think, the Quran is in his heart, he just literally cuts on the faucet. Hanafiya, some water, right? You just open it up and the water just flows out. That's how a qari is. He's so familiar with the Quran. That's how Ibn Khuzaymah was with the fiqh points from the hadiths. Last but not least, Ibn Surayj said Ibn Khuzaymah would take the benefits, the fawaid from the hadiths with a pair of pliers. Bil minqash. As if he had a pair of pliers, removing every faid. And this should show us the istinbat wal istikhraj, taking the benefits from the hadiths. Wafatuhu, when did he die? When and how did he die? فضل توفي
قال بعض أهل العلم في ردائه يا ابن إسحاق قد مضيت حميدا سقط الرك السحاب والفتون ما توليت لا بل العلم ولا ما دفناك بهو والمدفون.
Allah Akbar. Alright, so Ibn Khuzaymah, rahimahullah ta'ala, he died in the month of Dhul Qa'dah, the year 311. His son led the salah, and he was buried in a room in his home that was then turned into a grave. What's the ruling on that? Can you be buried in your house? Is that lawful? Mu'allafatuhu, his books, we'll summarize them. Fadal, Kitab al-Ashriba. So these are all books that he wrote. He wrote a book on drinks, the rulings of drinks. Al-Nabid, Al-Khamar, وهكذا, right? النبيذ ترى مشكلة. الشراب فيه مشاكل, right? People have been drinking for centuries. Arabs, non-Arabs, Persians, East, West, alcohol has always been a problem. Alright? Fermented drinks, fermented barley, hops, barley, wheat, honey, nabid. People have been drinking forever. He wrote a book on leadership in Islam, the Caliph, Imam. He wrote a book on Ahwal, the terrors of the Day of Judgment. The book on faith, Iman. The book on oaths. The book on piety and righteousness, keeping good relations with your family. A book on transactions, buying and selling. And he wrote a book on tafsir. Fadal Kitab al-Tawbah. So all of these different books he wrote on these different topics. Okay. Khayran, inshallah. Alright. Are they separate books? or are they a part of his own personal compendium? What's important is whether they're separate books, whether they're a part of this book or that book, it goes to show you shumuliyat, madhab al-muhaddithin, is that you're to take everything from the hadith, aqidah, ibadah, akhlaq, the technicality, and the spirituality. That's what's meant by that. That the deen is a complete deen. Alright? It's a complete deen. Alright, so we're done with that for now. Let's move forward. Read this briefly in English. Who was our volunteer in English? Bismillah, fadal. Mahad? Abu Bakr?
Was a prominent Muslim muhaddith and Shafi'i jurist, best known for his hadith collection, Sahih ibn Khuzaymah. He was born in Nishapur.
Shafi'i, his madhab, as a blind follower, fanatic, muta'assib, طبعا لا. Biography.
He was born in Nishapur a year earlier than Ibn Jarir al-Tabari, and outlived him by 1 year. In Nishapur, he studied.
Ibn Jarir al-Tabari, very, very important personality. Fadl.
In Nishapur, he studied under its scholars, including Ishaq ibn Rahway, and the muhaddith of Khurasan at the time, as well as with Bukhari and Muslim.
As we read. What was that, huh? طيب. Works. Al-Hakim recorded.
Hakim recorded that Ibn Khuzaymah wrote more than 140 books. Little of what he wrote survives today.
Little of what he wrote survives today. كما قلنا الجزء الموجود. Many books were burnt, stolen, destroyed. Now, Allah Alam, how many books were thrown into the river or destroyed when the Mongols sacked Baghdad? How many books were taken by the Crusaders? Allah Alam. How many books were stolen by the Fatimids, the Shia? How many books were stolen by Sunnis? Burnt, lost, lack of that. Rain, snow, books that were lost. But he wrote them and they were known to the scholars who came before us. First and foremost is
Sahih ibn Khuzaymah.
Mukhtasar al-Mukhtasar.
Mukhtasar al-Mukhtasar min al-Musnad al-Sahih. Only 1/4 of the book survived.
الجزء الموجود كما قلنا ما بقي إلا ربعه. قال it is a collection.
It is a collection of hadith covering prayer, fasting, pilgrimage, and zakat.
Tithe.
Among the
What's that word mean? Tithe. Faisal. King Faisal. Tax. Tithe. Studying hadith, we said, it forces you to have better what? English. We said this, right? It forces you to know and to study other things. So benefit. Fadl. Among the Sahih collections.
Among the Sahih collections after Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, it is regarded highly along with Sahih ibn Hibban and Sahih Abi Awana.
So there are other books of Sihah. هناك Sihah غير البخاري ومسلم. تفضل.
Has been edited by Muhammad Mustafa al-Azami and published by al-Maktab al-Islami in Beirut.
That's what we read. طيب. تفضل.
Kitab al-Tawheed
Another very important book is called Kitab al-Tawheed. Kitab al-Tawheed. Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab was the first one to write a book with that title. No one wrote about Kitab al-Tawheed. There's no Kitab al-Tawheed. You see here, historically, that's false. Other scholars had books with that title, Kitab al-Tawheed. That's a lie. What was this book, Kitab al-Tawheed, about? He said, وَإِثْبَاتِ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ. Kitab al-Tawheed وإثبات صفات عز وجل. Sifat al-Rabb. The book of the affirmation of divine unity and the affirmation of the attributes of the Lord. Affirming what Allah affirmed to Himself, what the Messenger ﷺ affirmed to Allah. It means this figuratively, that. Abadan. Abadan, abadan, abadan. The Aqidah of Ahl-Sunnah, Ahl-Hadith, this is what it is. The organic Aqidah of Ahl-Sunnah, Ahl-Hadith. The other GMO, genetically mutated additives, preservatives, abadan. It is not the way of the people of Hadith. Their aqidah was clear, right to the point. Kitab, Sunnah, the consensus of the companions, and the Salaf al-Salih. Fadl, third book.
شأن الدعاء والتفسير الهدية
Mathura, the importance of dua, an explanation of certain prophetic supplications, spirituality, being connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, making dua, calling on your Lord, invoking Allah all of the time, but based off of the authentic texts. The authentic texts. Last but not least, alright, Jazakallahu khairan, some references. Last but not least, tonight, bi'idhnillah, we will take some selections from the actual book, As-Sahih. Alright, before we start, let's see what we have at the end of this volume. See if there's anything special here. Alright, so you can benefit a lot as a Muslim, 9 to 5 Muslim, student of knowledge, talib al-ilm, just by reading the table of contents. And we've said this, whenever you buy a book, the first thing you should do, stamp your book. If you choose, write down when and where you bought the book, the day, the time, the location, read the author's introduction, and read the table of contents. If you do that, you have the ability to say, I read the book, in general. Okay? Alright, let's see what we have here. Let alone the different questions that will pop up in your head, and different rulings and benefits, alright? From just the table of contents, the fahras, if there's a fahras. Alright, bismillah. See what we have. Tayyib, Jazakallahu khairan. Who's our new reciter? Bismillah, Yusuf. Barakallahu feek. Extensive table of contents. All of these different chapters, issues, hadith. How much benefit will you get from reading the book 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour? How smarter would you become? How much would you learn about your deen? Just reading from the table of contents, 20 minutes of the day. You will learn so many different things. Your mind will be expanded with knowledge. Fadl Yusuf.
إمام الوضوء من الإسلام فضائل الوضوء فضل الوضوء ثلاثا حط الخطايا بالوضوء حط الخطايا ورفع الدرجات بإسباغ الوضوء على المكارة علامة أمة النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بآثار الوضوء يوم القيامة استحباب تطويل التحجيل نفي قبول الصلاة بغير وضوء بخبر مجمل نفي قبول الصلاة بغير وضوء بخبر مفسر وجوب الوضوء على بعض القائمين إلى الصلاة الوضوء لا يجب إلا من حدث صفة وضوء النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم على طهر من غير حدث جماع أبواب الأحداث موجبة للوضوء وجوب الوضوء من الغائط والبول والنوم وجوب الوضوء من المذي غسل الفرج من المذي مع الوضوء نضح الفرج مع المذي غسل الفرج ونضحه مع المذي أمر ندب وإرشاد.
Right, so he starts off the first volume. He doesn't start off with an introduction here, right here, we're reading. He doesn't start off with the book of Ilm, Kitab al-Ilm. He doesn't start off with the book of Iman. He doesn't start off with the Bad al-Wahi, but he goes right into the fiqh. And he talks about tahara, making a complete wudu, the virtues of wudu, making wudu 3 times, 2 times, 1 time, sins falling with every drop of water, alright? Making wudu when it's cold or with a little bit of water, right? How the Prophet's nation will be known on the Day of Judgment. And all of these different matters and issues and masail pertaining to wudu. Okay? The spirituality of wudu, the virtue of being clean, the virtue of being pure, spirituality, and the technicality, the actual ahkam, the rulings, the technicals of the wudu. Many Muslim groups, all they focus on is the spirituality. Spirituality is needed. That's the foundation. But that's it. And other groups, the only thing that they talk about and focus on, technicalities. Qala fulan, shafi, da, yajuz, ma yajuz, bas. Spirituality, Da'watuhum khaliyah. It's no spirituality. Only few people give the balance. We learn the halal and haram, but most importantly is the dhikr, the dua, the khashiyah, the taqwa, the khawf, being connected to Allah, through the sound Islamic knowledge. Through the sound Islamic knowledge. Khayran, inshallah. Jazakallah khayran. Our last selection tonight. I know I held you guys for a while. We're going to read from the book, inshallah. Kitab al-Salah. Book of prayer. Maybe we'll do something from Tahara. See what we got. Babu Dhikri. Alright, start off from the beginning, no problem. Bismillah. Alright, who's our reader? Jazakallah khairan, Yusuf. Who's going to get the reward? كلكم أصحاب اليمين إن شاء الله. ولكن بسم الله تفضل. أخبرنا.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أخبرنا إمام الأئمة فقيه الآفاق أبو بكر محمد بن إسحاق بن خزيمة النيسابوري الحافظ رحمه الله قال: كتاب الوضوء مختصر المختصر من المسند الصحيح عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بنقل العدل من العدل موصولا
عن العدل
بنقل العدل عن العدل موصولا إليه صلى الله عليه وسلم من غير قطع في أثناء الإسناد ولا جرح في ناقل الأخبار التي نذكرها بمشيئة الله تعالى.
So that's the title of the book right there. Wahid. That's the actual title. Mukhtasar al-Mukhtasar min al-Musnad al-Sahih. That's the full proper title. Once again, he didn't call his book Sahih ibn Khuzaymah. Bukhari didn't call his book Sahih Bukhari. Alright, type. Bismillah. Fadl. Babu.
باب ذكر الخبر الثابت عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بأن إتمام الوضوء من الإسلام. حدثنا أبو يعقوب يوسف بن واضح الهاشمي ثنا المعتمر بن سليمان عن أبيه عن يحيى بن يعمر قال: قلت يعني لعبد الله بن عمر: يا أبا عبد الرحمن إن أقواما يزعمون أن ليس قدر. قال: هل عندنا منهم أحد؟ قلت: لا. قال: فأبلغهم عني إذا لقيتهم أن ابن عمر يبرأ إلى الله منكم وأنتم براء منه. Alright. Jazakallah khairan. Let's pause this really quick. So the chapter heading states, once again, Fiqh al-Bukhari fi tarajumihi. Fiqh al-Muhadithin fi tarajum. Pay attention to the chapter heading. That's the main lesson that you're supposed to get from this hadith. He says the authentic report that proves that completing wudu, perfecting wudu is a part of one's Islam. Shaky wudu, shaky Islam. No wudu, no Islam. Your son, how does he make wudu? How good is your wudu? Show us your wudu. You know the wudu, in and out. The son in the bathroom, his elbow was dry, he just barely wiped over his feet. It's a problem. Mother, father didn't teach him the correct way. Didn't make the proper tabiyyah of something so basic. No wudu, no salah. No salah, how can you have the deen? So it's extremely important. Wudu is extremely important, and making it perfectly. So the first narration, he reports his sanad, once again, al-Hadith. Obviously this number isn't from Ibn Khuzaymah, that's from the editor, Abu Yaqub Yusuf ibn Wadih al-Hashimi. Now, we're not going to read all of it. The first hadith is reported from Yahya ibn Ya'mur. He's from the Tabi'in, the students of the companions. Not a companion, but the learners of the companions. The Salaf al-Salih, the pious predecessors. He said, one day, I asked Abdullah ibn Umar, and obviously this is هذه رواية مختصرة ولا في قصة كيف رحل إليه هو وصاحبه حاجين أو معتمرين. Hajjin or Mu'tamirin. Alright, they made Hajj or Umrah, they traveled to Hijaz to meet Abdullah ibn Umar. There were only a few companions left. The Sahaba was scarce. There were only a few of them left. And they had the need to travel towards them to ask them questions. So they met Abdullah ibn Umar, and they called to his kunya, Ya Aba Abdurrahman. Where we live, in Iraq, Khorasan, Sham, our lands, there are people who say that there is no such thing as qadr. Everything is a coincidence, an accident, it just happens, Allah doesn't decree anything. There's no such thing as qadr. And they still claim to be Muslim. You see the deviation from the correct aqidah from a very long time. And we see from this hadith, he died in the 4th century now, he wrote the book before he died, the 3rd century, is that people deviating from the correct aqidah isn't a modern day thing that this imam came and brought. But it's a reality, a very old reality. There will be people who say, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, yadharifuna an al-jada. They deviate from the correct way. And from that are those who said that there's no qadar. Ibn Umar says, Hal indana minhum ahadun? Are there any of these people who live amongst us, who are in our locale? He said, no. Ibn Umar says, when you go back home, فَأَبْلِغْهُمْ عَنِّي, tell them that this is what I said. إِذَا لَقِيتُمْ, when you meet them, Ibn Umar has nothing to do with you, you have nothing to do with him. Did Ibn Umar call them kuffar? Were they not Muslims? Is that what he meant? Or did he mean, I'm disgusted in this false belief system that you guys have, and that you have nothing to do with me, there's no relation between us. And then Ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, he then haddathani Umar ibn al-Khattab, that Umar ibn al-Khattab, my father, بينما نحن جلوس عند رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في أناس. وهذا معروف إيش؟ حديث من؟ Hadith Jibreel. So this goes to show you sabab al-wurud, why the hadith was passed on. Umar didn't narrate it, his son narrated it. Where did the hadith come from? How was it passed on? This is a beautiful fa'idah jamila jiddan. We benefit from this one book of showing the historical context behind these different reports. So Ibn Umar narrates from his father, we were sitting with the Messenger of Allah, a stranger came up to us, Shadid al-Bayad al-Faryabi, Shadid al-Sawad al-Shari, extremely white clothes on, extremely dark hair, he didn't look like a traveler, he wasn't a local. Who is this man? He sat in front of the Messenger of Allah, and he said, Oh Muhammad, tell me about Islam. This version of the hadith states that the Prophet ﷺ said, أن تشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمدا رسول الله وأن تقيم الصلاة وتؤتي الزكاة وتحج البيت وتعتمر وتغتسل من الجنابة وأن تتم الوضوء وتصوم رمضان. هذا محل الشاهد. وأن إيش؟ تتم الوضوء. So he says that Islam in this version is to be a witness, the shahadatain, establish prayer, establish zakat, make hajj, and also make umrah. And this is why some scholars believe that umrah is obligatory. This is their dalil, not a recommended thing. Also from Islam is to wash up from janaba, even if you're shy or scared or embarrassed. Somebody may ask you, you wake up in the morning for fajr and the shower is running. Why are you making a shower early in the morning? What's going on? 5:30 a.m., fajr's at 5:45. Why are you taking a shower? I'm embarrassed. I don't want the people to think, whatever. So therefore I prayed without making a ghusl. La. Abadan. Malish. You have to take that. You got to take a shower, do a bird bath, whatever you got to do to get out of the janaba. You had a wet dream? It's beyond your control. Inshallah, you weren't watching nothing haram before you went to sleep. But if that's not the case, it's beyond your control. You have to wash before you pray. Or, let's keep it real. We're adults, inshallah. And there will be adults very soon. You were with your wife, but you don't want your kids to know that you and mommy were together last night. The kids are a little older. They may laugh and joke and giggle. They're young, they're 12, 13, they're not stupid anymore. They get the birds and the bees. They understand the birds and the bees. So the kids are in the living room waiting for you to make your sunnahs and take you to the masjid, and all of a sudden the shower is on. Maybe a little embarrassing. So they see you walk down the steps, your hair is wet, and say, Abby, what's going on? We'll be taking a shower 5 a.m. in the morning. You don't have to go to work today. You take a shower later after breakfast. Right? It's a part of Islam. It's a part of Islam. It's nothing to be shy of. It's nothing to be embarrassed of. It's a part of our deed. You gotta wash. You gotta take a ghusl. Alright? This is why some scholars say that making a ghusl janaba is a major manifestation of faith. Because it's a secret that nobody knows about. Right now, am I junub? Do you know? I come in the masjid, make salah, isha, make 2 rakah. You don't know if I'm junub? You don't know. If I was junub and I made ghusl, that was because I was fearing who? Subhanahu wa ta'ala, nobody else. It's a secret. Just like fasting. You don't know who's eating. You don't know who's drinking behind closed doors. People pray in public together. People make zakat. It has to be in public. Hajj is what? In public. Your name is Muhammad, Ahmed, Abdurrahman, but what's on the inside, only Allah knows about. So when you wash, you make ghusl janaba, that proves that there's a khawf and muraqabah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, let alone if it's embarrassing. It's not about being embarrassed, it's about iman. So ghusl janaba is an amana. And many of our young youth and teenagers, I know for a fact, they don't make ghusl. If they had a wet dream, or if they fell into masturbation, or if they have a boyfriend or girlfriend, they don't make ghusl. They don't know how to make ghusl. They're too embarrassed. They're too ashamed. And they continue to pray without making a ghusl. It's a mushkilah. It's a big problem, and we have to teach our children. The hadith then states, and from Islam, وَأَن تُتِمَّ الْوُضُوء وَأَن تُتِمَّ الْوُضُوء, and for you to perfect your wudu, and for you to fast the month of Ramadan towards the end of the hadith. That's the highlighting point. We're going to, inshallah, stop here tonight. Hopefully, these words are clear and inshallah beneficial. I hope. Bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Jazakumullah khairan for your participation. If there are any questions, we'll try to entertain them if possible. And if not, I'll kindly ask your leave. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Fadda. Fadda. You got a nice, inshallah.
The part where you said, is it okay for someone to be buried in the house?
Okay.
Remember the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was buried in his house, and then Abu Bakr, his best friend, was buried by him, and then Omar also was buried by him also. So if the Prophet and 2 biggest closest Sahabas were allowed to be, is it okay?
Clear.
Is that clear?
Understood.
But other people can't live there.
Clear. Crystal clear. Jazakallah khairan. So therefore, can a person be buried in his home? And what are the different scenarios of a burial ground, a grave, tomb, mausoleum, whatever the case may be, sarcophagus, whatever the mode of burying is, in a house, a place of dwelling. All right. The Prophet ﷺ tells us, لا تتخذوا بيوتكم قبورا. Don't turn your homes into graveyards. I.e., صلوا في بيوتكم النوافل. Make the recommended prayers in your home. The graveyard isn't a place in which prayers to be made, with exceptions to janazah. And if a person wanted to take the literal wording of the hadith, it's also clear. Do not take your homes as graveyards. The living and the dead have 2 different worlds. But wasn't the Prophet buried in his home? Wasn't so on and so on and so forth. Beautiful. Aisha radiallahu anha, she clearly narrates, غَيْرَ أَنْ يُتَّخَذَ أَوْ خُشِيَ أَنْ يُتَّخَذَ مَسْجِدًا لَوْلَا ذَلِكَ لَأُبْرِزَ قَبْرُهُ أو كما قالت رضي الله عنها. If it wasn't for the fear that the people would fall into a fitna of the Prophet's grave, then his grave and his burial would have been open in public. But it was a fear. They were afraid that there would be some extremism and some ta'alluq, some connection to the grave. Once again, we're not here to talk about this one or that one or this dawah group, so on and so forth. The text clearly shows khashyatul iftitan min al-qabr, fearing connection to the grave. Many people today in different parts of the world, if you say this, the grave shouldn't be in the masjid, you can't, you're this, you're that, you're this, you're that, you're this, and you're that. Well, Aisha is as well. Khushiya, they was afraid. And that's the walk of the Sahaba. That's the time of the companions. So the Prophet being buried in his home was, one may say, a necessity and not a preference. Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu anhuma, the closest to him, and of course, the Prophet's grave wasn't turned into a place of prayer. It wasn't made into a shrine. How was the Prophet's grave annexed with the house of Aisha, the apartment of Aisha, into the masjid? The further discussion of the current state today. Alright, with regards to the Prophet's masjid in Medina, and how masjids are not to have graves. In general, the general rule is that the person shouldn't be buried in the home for several reasons. And from those reasons is that when a person is buried outside of the home, more people can make dua for them, visit those graves, and it shows the equality, the sunnah of death, is that the people are supposed to be equal, as a wise man once told us. There's no equality in this world except in the graveyard. And even in the graveyard, there's still not equality, because some people's tombstones are what? Bigger than others. He had money, obviously, but you get the point I'm trying to make. So therefore, a person shouldn't be buried in a home. He should not be buried in a home for several reasons, some of them we've mentioned. Okay? The Muslims should be buried with the Muslims in the graveyard and place of burial of the Muslims. For argument's sake, if the Prophet ﷺ was buried there, obviously that wasn't the sunnah of the Muslims. It wasn't something that they continued to do.
You want to keep his body safe, you want people worshiping his body,
Hahua.
taking pieces of his hair, and
Things like this. Okay? And of course, as we mentioned before, al-haqq wasat bayna tarafayn. The truth is always in the middle between two extremes. Wallahu ta'ala alam. Fadl, bismillah. ورد عن عبد الله بن عمر رضي الله عنهما في صحيح مسلم لا يقبل الله صلاة بغير طهور ولا صدقة من غلول. فهذا هو الثابت في الصحيح رواه عبد الله بن عمر أن الوضوء شرط أساسي للصلاة. لا يقبل الله صلاة بغير طهور. أما لا وضوء أو لا صلاة بلا وضوء ولا وضوء لمن لم يذكر اسم الله عليه، فهذا حديث أبي هريرة وهو وارد في السنن، وله عدة روايات والألفاظ، عدة ألفاظ، وقد اختلف أهل العلم في صحة هذا الحديث بين مصحح ومحسن ومضاعف. هناك روايات بطرق كثيرة جدا لهذه الألفاظ. لفظة لا وضوء لمن لم يذكر اسم الله، لا صلاة لمن لم يذكر، اختلافات موجودة، والله تعالى أعلم معناه صحيح، لا شك في ذلك. أما صحة نسبته إلى النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام فأهل العلم لهم يعني عدة أقوال في هذا الحديث بين مصحح محسن ومضاعف. هذا خلاصة الكلام على هذا السؤال، والله تعالى أعلم. خير إن شاء الله. No other questions.